We are just days away from kickoff to the 2023 NFL season, and it's going to feature a matchup of the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs versus the upstart Detroit Lions. And this year's Lion team has a different energy around it, and certainly in my lifetime. So for context, I was born in 1994. The last time the Detroit Lions won the division was 1993. Brad Holmes, the GM of the Detroit Lions, had a comment in a recent interview where he said his confidence is very high that the Lions will win the NFC North. In fact, his full quote was, "We've gone through a lot of darkness to get to this point." And anyone that's watched the Detroit Lions know he's not exaggerating. It has been a lot of dark times in Detroit. I don't believe they had a playoff win at all in that time either, because Matthew Stafford didn't have a win as a Detroit Lions quarterback. In Detroit, he was obviously the starting quarterback for the majority of my lifetime watching this team play. We look at the NFC North. Aaron Rodgers is gone. The Packers might take a step back. Justin Fields, still an enigma. We know he's very talented, but he hasn't shown it entirely in the NFL quite yet. And then the Vikings won a lot of coin toss games last year. But then there are the Lions, had the worst defense in the league for the first half of the season, and then just started going on a little bit of a run. And if it wasn't for a few things towards the end of the season, maybe they could have made the playoffs last year. Long-winded intro here, but Kyle, when you look at the Lions, should Brad Holmes be this confident in this team coming into the season?
Short answer, I have no idea. No idea. Long answer, if I told you that every team in the NFC North, if I told you the Vikings, the Packers, the Lions, or the Bears were to finish this season 8-8, you would believe me. You'd be like, I could see that. I could see the Vikings going 8-8. I could see the Packers going 8-8. I could see the Lions going 8-8. I could see the Bears going 8-8. And I know people will tell me right now, but Kyle, they play 17 games in the NFL season. Yes, I'm saying 8-8-1, all of them. The Packers will tie the Lions. The Bears will tie the Vikings. All of them go 8-8-1 in this season. They will all finish with identical records. It's all possible at this point, because if you were to rank every NFL team right now from 1 to 32 on their preseason odds, I would say the Vikings are probably like 11 or 12. The Lions are probably 12 or 13. The Packers are probably like 15, 16. And the Bears are probably like 17, 18, 19 or something like that. That would be my assumption. All of them are very close to each other, and all of them play each other a lot, which is going to be really interesting because each team plays 6 games against their divisional opponent. We all know that. Those games are going to matter a lot because the margins are going to be so thin in that whole division. And so if a team is going to emerge as a 10-11 win team out of that division, maybe get the 3 seed, or maybe be spicy and get the 2 seed in the NFC, I think it's probably going to be, if I had to pick one team, most likely, I think it's going to be the Vikings. But if I had to pick a second version, I think it would be the Detroit Lions, because I think that Detroit has more talent on that team compared to the Bears and Packers.
And they're a more talented roster because of many of those years of darkness that Holmes speaks of. Obviously, they've been very high in the draft for many years, and that's allowed them to get players like a Penei, Sewell, Aidan, Hutchinson, and that's put them in the position that they are now. Now, when you look around the landscape of the NFC North, where are the Lions' advantages? Okay, so when we talk about like coaches in the NFC North, we're going to figure out how good LaFleur really is with Aaron Rodgers no longer there. We saw what happened with Kevin O'Connell last year. He seemed to turn around like a stagnant Minnesota Vikings team, certainly revitalized their offense, but we'll see how that translates into year 2. Again, I mentioned they had a lot of coin toss victories. And Eberflus, no one really knows how good he is. He hasn't won in this league yet. So when we look at the second most important aspect of this, the quarterback position, I think at this time, and I know we might disagree a little bit here, I still think that Kirk Cousins is the best quarterback in the NFC North right now at this moment. Now, if Justin Fields does take another step in his development, sure, he could potentially surpass Kirk Cousins this year. Goff at the moment, I think still might be 2 or tied for 2 when it comes to Justin Fields. I think the worst at this moment is clearly Jordan Love, just because we just really haven't seen it. And even the games we have seen, it's not all that impressive. Jared Goff, he is a guy that at the end of the day has been to a Super Bowl. You can obviously credit a lot of that to Sean McVay going to Los Angeles. But when he has time to function in that pocket, and he does have one of the better offensive lines in the league, he is a dangerous quarterback. He can make the right decisions, the right reads, when he protects the ball and is not turning the ball over a lot, which I think was a frustration in year one between him and Dan Campbell. But I feel like they corrected that a lot. I like their backfield. David Montgomery has been quietly one of the better running backs, or more steady running backs in the league for a while. Jahmyr Gibbs, I was surprised they went running back in the first round, but if he is as talented as people think that he can be, then he's going to add every bit of that offensive punch, and certainly that offensive line is going to prop him up. Now, the big question for me is going to be their defense, because as I mentioned last year, when they started off, they were historically bad. They were awful. They were allowing 30 points a game every game for like the first 6 weeks of the season. And then they played Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers and shut them down. And it just seems like something turned around a little bit in that team. And now can they carry whatever momentum they had at the end of last season into this season? Because if they can't, if they go out there and allow 50 points in week one to the Chiefs, then that just completely throws off all the expectations for this Lions team. So breaking down the roster and how that compares to some of the other NFC North opponents, like when we talk about it from that aspect, what are your thoughts?
Better on defense, but slightly worse on offense. And the offense reason is because it's really hard to expect Jared Goff to have another Pro Bowl season, right? Jared Goff was 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 4,500 yards, a passer rating of 100, which put him as one of 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL last year. I feel like it's hard to expect that coming back for Jared Goff, especially for the fact that like 5 players on the team are suspended for gambling to start the season, including his number 2 receiver, Jameson Williams.
I didn't even mention the wide receivers too. I should say, like, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's a badass. Marvin Jones, he's the old guy in the room, but coming back to Detroit from the Jaguars, he's great too. But if they do get Jameson Williams and he's everything that it is advertised, that's a great wide receiving room to have. Yeah,
and I don't think they'll be able to replicate the offensive production as last. I don't understand the Jahmyr Gibbs thing either, but maybe I didn't see it in college the same way other people did with Jahmyr Gibbs when they were talking about him being the first or second running back off the board after Bijan Robinson. I'm like, I get it from the physical gifts, and sometimes that's the thing that really matters, but I liked Charbonnet who went to Seattle. I liked him as a running back prospect more than Gibbs. I'm interested by their decision to go Gibbs and also to go Jack Campbell with their second first round pick, because Jack Campbell, our friend Blake Jude had him as a 3rd round grade, and they really reached on him in the first round as a linebacker. Obviously, they tried to bring in cornerback help because their cornerback room was decimated last year. They obviously traded away Jeff Okudah, replaced him with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is now hurt, so he's not going to be around to start the season. Quintez Cephas on the defense, he's suspended for gambling. So I'm just interested to see what that ends up becoming for the Lions. I guess your question was about, are the Lions going to take a leap? And like I said off the beginning, I don't know the answer, but I'm not as gung-ho believe in the Lions as other people are. I still think the Vikings are going to win that division this year. They're going to probably be either the 3 or the 4 seed in the NFC playoffs, and depending on who they play in the wild card, will probably get smoked a little bit, like they did last year by the New York Giants. But yeah, I mean, the division's up for the taking. That's the thing I'll say for sure. Because again, I think all of these teams are in that like 12 to 18 range of the best teams in the NFL. And none of those teams jumps out to me as like they are going to blow the league away and compete with the 49ers and compete with the Eagles and compete with the Cowboys in the NFC.
Now, one thing, though, I will credit to this team is I feel like they did change the culture there, which was a big thing that Dan Campbell was tasked with whenever he took over the reins in Detroit. And I mean, you just hear the way the players talk about him. Hell, Charles Barkley even had a comment this week that he would run through a brick wall for this guy, like that he wanted a guy like Dan Campbell as his head coach. And I think that's powerful. I think that resonates. And you can tell, like, I mean, I feel it. I mean, Dan Campbell, There's sometimes that I'm like, damn, I kind of wish he was our head coach in San Francisco over Kyle Shanahan. If for nothing else, not from a play calling standpoint, just because like he's the type of guy that you want to root for in a way. And so I'm looking at their early season schedule. I think a large part of the hype for Detroit is just going to be kind of how they get started. So they're playing the defending Super Bowl champions. This is unique for Detroit because they weren't getting scheduled in a lot of primetime games over the last few years. If they lose week 1 to the Chiefs, no one's going to bash them over the head for it. I think that that's depending if they get embarrassed or not, I should say. Like if they go out there and they legitimately, like, it's a 45-7 skunking, then people will start talking about, oh, maybe we jumped the gun on the Lions. But if they go out there and look semi-competitive, maybe keep it within like 10 points, couple touchdowns or something like that, I think that the hype is not going to die down on this Detroit Lions. Okay, fast forward to week 2. They have the Seahawks. Seahawks playoff team from a year ago. They face the Falcons the following week, Packers, and Panthers. So they have, in this stretch of the schedule, I could see a 4-1 stretch out of this first 5 opponents. I mean, 3-2 would be, I think, a huge win for them, but I could see a 4-1 stretch potentially because, again, if you lose to the Chiefs, no shame in that. It happens. Seahawks, Geno Smith, will he be Geno Smith from last year, or will he be Geno Smith from the Jets, Chargers, Geno Smith from the first half of his NFL career? The Falcons, can they shut down the running game, I guess? It would be Bijan Robinson. We know what the Falcons are going to bring to that game. The Packers, again, with the Jordan Love like mystery. How good will he be? How good will LaFleur be? Don't know that. Panthers, I think that they'll be bad with a rookie quarterback. So again, 4 winnable games in your first 5 games. You start 4-1, and suddenly winning the NFC North is not only not out of reach, it's certainly kind of starts feeling like a more a surety.
How would you feel if they went 2-3 in that stretch of games?
If they went 2-3 in that stretch of games, and obviously too, depending on who they lose to, like if they lose to the Packers, that's bad. That doesn't make me feel too good about them. If they, let's say the 3 losses came against the Chiefs, Seahawks, gosh, if they start 0-3 and they lost to the Falcons, then I would really feel down on them. Like, because come on, how many teams 0-3 have went on to do great things, win a playoff game, win a division? It just doesn't happen. You can't start 0-3. So in the first 3 games, I think that the expectation should be go 2-1.
I wouldn't say that because I'm going to put this out there. There's no scenario they're going to beat Kansas City in the first game of the season. Just going to put it out there. When they're getting their Super Bowl rings at their home stadium, first game, there's no scenario they're going to beat Kansas City. Kansas City scores 35 points with their eyes closed. And this is the Detroit defense we're talking about here. I know they're a little bit more improved. They've added a couple pieces. This is Detroit's defense against Kansas City's offense. They're not going to win that football game. The other side of the coin is they can start 0-3 in context will make me feel a little bit better about them. But the 4 games that you mentioned there, which are Seahawks, Falcons, Packers, and Panthers, other than maybe the Panthers game, I feel like all of those are coin toss games. And so if you're flipping the coin 3 times, maybe it comes up heads 3 times and they start 3-1. Maybe it comes up tails 3 times and it starts 0-4. Sometimes that's just the shitty thing about how small these margins are.
I think, though, part of the reason why I say they can't start 0-3 is because it's also a mental thing for them. If they go into the season, they start 0-3, then all that positive vibes, all that good energy that we're talking about that they have going into this season, that starts to dissipate. And it's hard to regain that. Now, we know last season, what they start 0-5, 0-6. They start, I know that, yeah, they didn't win in the first month, and that's kind of why they didn't make the playoffs. Like, hell, if they just had 1 win in that first month, think about that. If they had 1 win in that first month, they're in the playoffs. How different do we look at them if they're a team coming off at least a playoff run? I mean, look at the Philadelphia Eagles last year, right? Like the Philadelphia Eagles, yeah, they went to the playoffs the year before, got crushed by the Buccaneers, but then they were able to use that positive energy and bring it into their Super Bowl run last year. The Lions, I'm not saying that they're talking Super Bowl out there in Motown, but, you know, just having the confidence coming off like a good quality stretch of games, winning some games early in the season, that could make all the difference in the world to whether or not your team is actually good and competing throughout the season. So I think 2-1, it feels like almost a necessity. Like if they go into that Packers game, they're 1-2. I just don't feel as good about them, you know?
Like I said at the beginning, I don't know if the Lions will make the leap this year. I genuinely don't know. I would say the measure of success for the Lions is if they do win that division. Doesn't matter if they win it with 9 wins, 10 wins, 8 wins, doesn't matter. If they get to play a playoff game on their home field for the first time in 32 years, that's going to be a successful season. The Bengals a couple of years ago with Joe Burrow got to host that playoff game against the Raiders with the Bespaccia Raiders and the whistle that took away a touchdown or whatever you want to call it. Like when the Bengals got to host that playoff game and they won their first home playoff game in 30 years, that season was a success at that point. After that, they went on to beat the Titans and then go to Kansas City and beat Kansas City. But that season was a success as soon as they won that playoff game against the Raiders. That's when you knew you had a quarterback. You knew you had a wide receiver in Jamar Chase that added value like a quarterback, and you had a team that had turned a corner. If Detroit can get to the playoffs and play, don't even have to win, play a playoff game on their home field, this will be a successful season for the Detroit Lions. That should be the marker of success. Doesn't matter how many games you win. If you can get to the playoffs, that will be that will be proof that this Man Campbell thing has worked and that they will continue to give him a contract extension, potentially bring back Jared Goff on a contract extension, and continue to build the way that Brad Holmes and him have been building the last couple of years.
Well, isn't also part of the equation and part of the expectations are, again, we mentioned the weakened NFC North, but also the weak NFC. Like you mentioned, they don't necessarily have to win a playoff game, but if they are a division champion, facing one of these wildcard teams in the NFC, a lot of the teams that are going to make the wild card in the NFC aren't going to be like powerhouses exactly. I don't think it would be a good look for them to end up looking like the Minnesota Vikings last year, right? To go in, win your division and getting killed by the New York Giants. I don't think that would be a good look. I mean, it would feel good for them again to make the playoffs, but if you're again building positive energy and you are the home team, losing to a wild card team is something that I don't think that they should be proud of necessarily.
I don't know, because think about the Chicago Bears from a few years ago. Remember when they were doing the club dub thing and they intercepted Aaron Rodgers and won the NFC North, and they were all excited about that thing. And then they got to the playoffs, hosted a home playoff game, and then the double doink game happened. Yeah, the double doink game was pretty demoralizing. But I think the thing that was more demoralizing for their chances going forward was Mitchell Trubisky not being the quarterback they had anticipated Mitchell Trubisky would be. That could be a greater problem than getting blown out in a playoff game by a team like the Cowboys.
What I would stop you there in saying is just, years of evidence at this point proves that Jared Goff, yeah, he's a flawed player. Everyone's a flawed player in the NFL. But I do think that Jared Goff has proven that he is a capable starter in this league. He's a starter that can win playoff games in this league when he has the right team around him. Is this Lions team the right team around Jared Goff? I mean, again, one of the best offensive lines in football, right? Talented wide receivers. And if Gibbs is good, this running game is good like last year again, that seems like the right offense that I would want a guy like Jared Goff to succeed in. He stayed healthy throughout his NFL career. Will that remain into this season too? I think that that's one of his bigger strengths as a player. Again, I think one of the bigger issues in his career was turnovers early. Last year, he did a great job limiting it. You said you don't think that he can necessarily repeat last season. Well, he can if he just, again, limits the turnover ball. Yeah, I think that Jared Goff can do that because I don't think that the opportunity to have to play this team into wins is necessarily going to be there. I think that if he game manages all year, I think the Lions are okay with that.
In 1 year, Jared Goff went from being the bridge quarterback in the rebuild to the quarterback they're actually thinking about keeping around long term. And that is a massive success from Jared Goff's standpoint. Now, you talked about Goff as one of those quarterbacks that he's a product of the talent that you build around him. He's not necessarily going to elevate the players around him, but he's also not going to drive the whole thing into a ditch. If you're talking about the talent that they've surrounded with Jared Goff with this year, and if that with Jared Goff at quarterback will be good enough to be winning a playoff game in the NFC, let's say. So let's say they're one of the 4 best teams in the NFC. I would say, is that the case with the talent around them this year? My answer is I don't think so, but I also am not 100% sure because I can't name a team other than the 49ers, the Eagles, and I think the Seattle Seahawks, who I can say definitively are better than the Detroit Lions.
The Cowboys, maybe.
The Cowboys is a maybe. Yes, the Cowboys are definitely a maybe in that group. And that's the thing where I'm like, there's like 7 teams that could be that team other than Detroit. That's why I say I don't think so, just because the odds are not stacked in Detroit's favor. And at the same time, I'm not going to rule it out entirely because for the second half of last season, Detroit was the 4th best team in the NFC. I mean, all the numbers bared it out that after the 49ers, Eagles, and Cowboys from November onward, Detroit was the 4th best team in the NFC. So I'm not going to rule out the fact that it's a possibility. It's just, I would say, unlikely.
Detroit Lions, a lot of hype going into this year. The GM is confident. The coach is confident. Fans seem to be confident. I mean, hell, they sold out Ford-filled and season tickets for the first time in the history of that stadium. What do you think about this team? Do you think that they'll be able to win the NFC North, win the NFC? Who knows? Go on to bigger and grander things. I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social medias. From Juju and Kyle, stay safe, happy, and healthy. We'll see you next time.